My name is Charles Swanson. Today is December 13th, 2013, and I'm in Knoxville, Tennessee to interview Anna Hinds. This interview is taking place as a part of the Legal History Project of the Fellows of the Tennessee Bar Foundation. Please tell us your full name.
Anna Carolyn Fox Hinds.
Spell that second name for me if you would.
Carolyn, C-A-R-Y-L-O-N.
It's a little unusual spelling for that name. You know where that came from?
Well, my father said that he heard there was a movie star with that name, but she must not have been very famous. But my 7th grade teacher sat me down and wrote Carolyn and said, I want you to start spelling your name this way.
Is that right? And how did you respond to that?
I said, but that's not my name.
Good for you. Now, if you don't mind, tell me what day you were born.
Well, I think that's a required question, I believe you said.
I think it is.
Okay, October 13, 1938.
Tell me your maternal grandfather's name, please.
David Henry Vick.
And he was married to?
Anna
Anna.
May Macmillan.
And am I correct to assume that's where your first name came from?
It is.
And what did your maternal grandparents do? Where'd they live?
They're all from Cott County. Actually, I did not know my maternal grandfather. He died in 1937 at the age of 54, I think. My grandmother was a homemaker. She had 7 children. She raised 7 children. And she lived in Bruner's Grove her whole life. I visited her a lot in the summer. And she lived to go to my college graduation and to my brother's wedding and my sister's wedding, but not to mine.
Now, is Bruner's Cove in Cott County?
Grove.
Grove?
Bruner's Grove, yes.
Okay.
It's important because that's where my father met my mother. He was teaching school at Bruner's Grove, not her sister, her youngest sister.
What was your father's father named?
I never knew his parents, but I can tell you their name. He was Charles Martin Fox, of German descent, according to my sister. And did you ask about the mother? Her name
Yes,
was
please.
Ruhamie. Ruhamie.
Did they also live in Cott County?
They did, in Point Pleasant.
Do you know what your paternal grandfather did for a living?
He didn't live very long, but he fathered 11 children.
That's what he did for a living.
He did. Actually, he died at, I think he was in his 34th year.
Oh. So tell me a little bit about your mother, and tell me something that you most like to remember about your mother.
My mother, I've told someone was Avon sales representative, but what I want to tell you is that my mother was the Avon lady in Blount County. And she, from the time before my sister went to school until a few years before she died, she walked all over Blount County. Everyone knew her, and she also was a wonderful cook, and she let anyone at her table, and she had a good home.
What was your mom's name?
Edna Elizabeth Vick.
And when did she meet your father?
When he was teaching school at Bruner's Grove, my mother's youngest sister was a student. And so they were married in 36, but my father's father died when my father was 8 years old, leaving him as the head of the household, being the oldest male, not the oldest. The youngest. He was the youngest child, youngest male child. And he stayed with his mother until she died. And even though he was teaching school, they had the family farm. And then He died in 35. She died in 35. And my father and mother married in 36.
Tell me your dad's name.
Ivan, I-V-A-N.
Now, Ivan was a school teacher.
He was.
What grades did he teach?
I think it was a 1 or 2 room schoolhouse.
So he pretty much taught all the grades?
He did.
Had he been to college, do you know?
Yes, he went to Milligan College.
Other than serving as a school teacher over in Cott County, did your dad have other occupations that he followed?
After in the big war, 1941, he moved. He came to Alcoa and left his family at the farm for a while. Then he moved his family to Marital. I grew up in Marital. And he retired from Alcoa.
While he was teaching school, was he farming in Cott County as well?
Yes.
Were you born on the farm?
I was delivered by a midwife on the farm.
And when your family moved to the Marital, Alcoa area, when was that?
41.
And how old were you?
I was barely 3.
Do you have much memory of that?
I remember being in Rockford. At first, we were in a tea room, rented apartment or something, and then my parents bought the house in Rockford. I remember being in Rockford because my brother went first grade there, and then we moved to Blunt Hills, where Alcoa had built Eagleton School and Eagleton Village for the workers there. It's a big expansion of the aluminum company at that time.
The fact that your dad started out as a school teacher, do you think that had any impact on expectations for Anna?
Yes, for all of us.
Tell me about that. What expectations did you have?
Just knew that I would always go to college.
Ever any doubt in your mind that you would go past high school with your education?
Never. No, never that I would not go past high school, yes.
How about your siblings? Did you have siblings?
I did. I had an older brother. He was recruited to Tennessee Tech when engineers were short, and it was Tennessee Polytechnic Institute. So he went there, which is where I eventually got my bachelor's.
All right. How much older than you was your brother?
2 years.
Were you close with your brother?
Yes.
Did he
yes.
become an engineer by attending Tennessee Tech?
He did.
And then where did he work?
He worked at TVA as a mechanical engineer his entire career.
Is your brother still alive today?
No, he isn't. He died in 2009.
And you have a sister as well, I believe.
I do.
And what's her name?
Phyllis Diane Fox Lawson.
When was she born?
43.
So you would have already moved to the Marital, Alcoa area when she came on board the family, right?
She was born at Blunt Memorial Hospital.
All right. She was about 5 years younger than you?
Yes.
And did you maintain a close relationship with your sister as well?
Yes, but it was different because we were never in high school together. So she was quite a bit younger.
What did your sister grow up to be?
She's the insurance administrator for Clayton County Schools System in Clayton County, Georgia. She's retired now.
All right. Did she do anything else in Georgia other than just being retired? What did she do primarily?
Full-time DAR, Colonial Dames, Bench and Bar, all of those. Daughters of the Union, too.
All right. So full-time DAR means full-time Daughters of the American Revolution.
Right.
She does a lot of research?
She does, and so that means I'm in all those organizations.
She shares those experiences with you?
She does, and she just loves it.
So I think I saw somewhere that both of your parents died in the same year. When was that?
They did. They died in 1990, my mother in May and my father 3 weeks later.
What did your mother die of?
Well, have congenital heart disease. Not a bad way to go.
And your dad the same?
My dad was at the Blount County Courthouse transferring title to from my mother's car to my brother and died on the bench, sitting on the bench while my brother was. He turned to ask him question and he was slumped over. He died in the county courthouse.
And how old was he then?
77, I believe.
Did you feel like growing up with your family and Marital played a role in the person that you turned out to be?
I do. Marital had a really good school system. I did not go to city schools, but the school that Alcoa built for its employees' children in Eagleton was really, really good. And when I went to Everett High School, the principal there said that they knew when the students came from Eagleton. They were distinguishable. And so I think I had a good education in public schools of Blount County.
Do you recall the year you graduated from Everett High School?
Oh, yes, 56.
After high school, what was your next educational stop?
I went to Tennessee Wesleyan College, which was then a 4-year college, but had been a junior college. It had a junior college program, and I went 2 years there.
Where is that located?
Athens, Tennessee.
How did you come to go down to Athens, Tennessee to go to school at Tennessee Wesleyan?
I grew up Methodist, and it's a Methodist school in the Holston Conference. Some of my friends from the church had gone before me, and it was a small school that I thought I would like, and I did like it very much. Had a wonderful choir, wonderful music program, good teachers, great teachers.
Now, did you pursue the 2-year program there or the 4-year program there?
I was enrolled in the 4-year program, and it took a few more hours to get the junior college degree than it would have taken just to become a junior. But I went to the Tennessee Polytechnic Institute military ball, and I decided I really needed to move out of Tennessee Wesleyan and go to Tennessee Tech.
Now tell me what prompted that decision by going to the military ball. What was it about going to the military ball that made you feel like Tennessee Tech would be a great move for you?
Well, it had a great band. Dr. Julian was the director, and I was a majorette, and I was an ROTC sponsor. It was just a larger campus, beautiful new dorms, and my brother hardly spoke to me on campus, but he was there.
So you moved to Tennessee Tech in what year?
I graduated the 2-year program in '58 and went to Tennessee Tech and graduated in '60.
All right. With what degree?
Bachelor of Science in Social Science.
So while you were at Tennessee Tech, were you a majorette there?
I was.
All right.
Golden Girl.
What is a Golden Girl?
That's a majorette that wears gold sequins.
I see. Anything else you did at Tennessee Tech other than the academic course that was interesting to you?
Oh, I liked school. So I liked French and philosophy and math. I liked studying. But my father suggested that I get some education courses so I could be a school teacher as a fallback from whatever I was going to do. But I couldn't get in because all the women were in education, trained to be teachers. I couldn't even get in the courses.
As you were going to school there at Tennessee Tech, what did you have in mind for your future at that point? Or did you have anything in mind?
Well, it wasn't law. I guess I didn't. I had a an active social life. So, no, I didn't have a degree that prepared me for anything. So I went home at graduation and took a job at Alcoa.
So you majored in social sciences with a minor degree in baton twirling.
That's right. Fire.
Fire?
I twirl fire.
You could twirl a fire baton?
I did.
Can you still do it?
I doubt it.
When did you last twirl a baton?
Well, I twirled a baton just the other day, but it wasn't fire.
I see. I'm almost prompted to ask you why you were twirling a baton the other day.
Oh, well, okay. You know, I was displaced from my home, and so I have all this stuff in storage. And I was moving some stuff around, and I had my baton.
Huh.
So the handyman and his helpers watched me twirl a baton.
So you graduated from Tennessee Tech, but you don't start or continue your education at that point. You worked for a year. Am I right about that?
I had to have a job because I bought a '98 Olds convertible, a 1959 Dusty Rose '98 Olds convertible, and I had to work.
In order to pay for the car?
Well, both, I guess. I had to work just to support myself, although I lived at home. But yes, I did buy the car immediately before I took the job, before I started to work.
So where were you working in order to pay for this Oldsmobile?
Aluminum Company of America, West Plant.
Say that again, because I don't think I understood what you said.
The West Plant of the Aluminum Company of America, the main office.
And what did you do there?
Well, I started in the mailroom, and I love this. I mean, I cried about it at one time to my brother, because that was all I was doing, but I really loved it because I actually sorted the mail and carried it throughout all of the West Plant. And so I got to know everybody there, and I moved on from there within the company. But
as you were working in that job, and even though you enjoyed that job, did you have in your mind that you intended to further your education?
Well, I thought I might further my position at Alcoa, but I learned very quickly that that didn't happen. Most of my colleagues in there had been there for 25 years, and they still had desk jobs. So I began looking at what I could do with a social science degree. But then I had the car to pay for.
So what was the barrier that prevented you from moving up in the Alcoa hierarchy?
Well, I eventually went to cost accounting, and then I applied for something in the engineering department, and I didn't get that. I remember the supervisor in that department said that I was close, but I said, well, close only counts in horseshoes. Then I had to go back and apologize because that was not very nice. But no, I knew I had to do something else. And I didn't want to live at home forever.
Do you have a recollection of when you formulated in your mind the thought that, well, maybe I'll just go to law school?
Well, see, I worked 3 years, and the last year I worked to get money to go to law school. I sold the car, and I saved some money because my father said that if I paid my own way the first year, he would pay the rest, which he did, even though I was married. So I guess backing up, that would be within a year, and certainly within 2, I knew I wanted to go to law school. In fact, I applied to law school a year before I even went. Still didn't have the money.
Why law school as opposed to anything else that you might do?
Well, I really had a background in pre-law. When you look at the courses, that's what the guys were taking for pre-law.
Did you seriously consider careers other than the law?
I noticed that my background also would get me a social worker's job, but I preferred the law degree.
So tell us about applying to law schools and being accepted to law school.
Well, I applied to UVA, Vanderbilt, and UT, and UVA rejected me by return mail. And so Vanderbilt accepted me and UT accepted me, and I preferred to go away.
Why?
Well, I had gone to Tennessee Wesleyan in Athens, and then I moved a little farther away to Cookeville, and then I thought, well, I'll just go to Nashville, see the world.
At that point in time, did you know any lawyers?
Not really, but I wasn't. During my 3 years of working at Alcoa, I tried all these women's clubs. I was in a Toastmasters club, and Marianelle Ross Wagner had a law degree from Vanderbilt in 1948. She spoke to the club, but she did not practice law, and so I didn't know any practicing lawyers. She was in insurance, the insurance family, Wagners.
Did she talk to you when she talked to you about her experience in law school at all?
No, I just remember hearing her speak and realizing that she was from Vanderbilt Law School.
Did you know any other women lawyers at that time?
I didn't know any lawyers.
So you were accepted at Vanderbilt, moved to Nashville. Were you by yourself at that time?
Yes, I lived in the graduate school for women was in the nursing school. So there were a few women law students, some graduate students, and postgraduate students.
How many women law students were there in your class at Vanderbilt Law School?
3 to begin, yes.
How many women were in your law school class at the end of your law school career at Vanderbilt?
It was a different class, but there were 3.
3 when you started and 3 when you finished?
But not the same other 2.
That's what I was going to ask you. Were they the same 3?
No.
So you had an interesting law school career, and it sort of moves around, and I want people to understand how you went through law school, because it's a little unusual the way you went to law school. So just tell us the story about how you went to law school and where you went.
Well, after the decision to go to law school, I committed to marry Howard Hinds. And he was at the chaplain at Tennessee Wesleyan College, and wanted to go back to Emory to get his master's in theology. And I wanted to go to law school. So we decided I would go to law school the first year, and then we would be married. And then we would both go back to school. But he got more money from Emory than from Vanderbilt. So we went to Emory, and I did my second year at Emory Law School.
So you go 1 year to Vanderbilt,
Mm-hmm.
and then transfer for your next year to Emory Law School. Is that right?
Yes.
All right. At what point in that process do you get married?
After the first year at Vanderbilt, a few weeks after the first year, after the semester ended, we married in '64.
So you're a newlywed and a second-year law student at Emory University, right?
Correct. And he's a graduate student.
And where is Emory?
Atlanta, Decatur, Georgia.
How was that? How was transferring from one law school to the next law school? Was that a problem for you, or did you enjoy it? Or just tell me about that experience.
It was a good experience because the deans and the professors of the 2 schools helped. I think there's a professor at Emory whose name was King, and so there was Dean Wade at Vanderbilt who contacted King, I guess. And then as it turned out, King's daughter was in my graduating class at Vanderbilt Law School, but she wasn't there when I started, so I don't know how that all worked out. Now she's the dean of the Emory Law School.
So when you got to Emory in your second year law school class, how many women classmates did you have in your second year law class at Emory?
You know, I probably just 2 or 3, but it was I was a married student. You know, I lived in married housing then, and so I was kind of a day student. But most people were. They even had a night school at Emory. It was not a very large school. I think there were just about 60 in the class.
Did you do well academically?
Just so.
You had other things on your mind as well as your law school career at that time, didn't you?
Well, there's just a lot of smart people in law school. I was just average.
So did you then, after your second year of law school at Emory, did you then go back to Vanderbilt?
I did not go right away. I told Howard I wanted to graduate from Vanderbilt. And that we decided we would both stay in Atlanta while he finished his coursework at the theology school for his master's. Then we would go back to Vanderbilt. And again, the transition was beautiful because the professors just made it easy for me to go back.
While you were in law school, both at Vanderbilt and at Emory, how did your male classmates react to having a woman in their midst?
I don't think they noticed.
You didn't feel like you were singled out for any type of special treatment because you were a woman?
Well, no, I will say that Jim Neal in the criminal law seminar, where it was Fred Dalton Thompson and Aubrey Harwell and about 6 other guys, and he called on me 3 days in a row. And if you know what that means, I mean, usually if a professor calls on you, you got it made for the rest of the semester, and we were on semesters. He called on me 3 days in a row. But our paths crossed a lot in years after that at the Alumni affairs, and he's quite a character.
Did you ever have occasion to remind him that he had called on you 3 days in a row?
I think I did.
Do you recall what his reaction to that was?
Oh, no, I do not.
So in order to understand your experience, I know that you go 1 year to Vanderbilt, then you go a year to Emory, but then there's a year separated between when you leave Emory and come back to Vanderbilt. Am I right about that?
That is right. I worked in a law firm in Decatur, Georgia, and I think I probably took one course. I think I took a wills course at night.
From Emory?
You're right.
All right. What sort of work were you doing in the law firm?
Well, as a criminal defense attorney, his name is Mobley Childs, and he had these hardened criminals. He really did. But I really was more of a secretary and research assistant.
Do you recall being concerned about your personal safety because of his clientele?
No. No.
So then after your year of working in the law firm, you transferred back to Vanderbilt.
I did.
Were there any problems with these transfers going back and forth? Were there any issues?
No.
So when you got back to Vanderbilt, you were a third-year law student.
Yes.
How many women in your class then?
3.
Do you remember the names of the 2 women who started out at Vanderbilt with you?
I do. Sissy Daughtry and Bonnie Meacham. We were all single, 3 single women. We sat in the middle of the huge classroom. Bonnie and I sat here, and Sissy sat there.
Do you remember the names of the 2 women who were in your graduating class?
Yes, Harriet King. She's now the dean of the Emory Law School. and Liz Culbreth. These are all maiden names.
Right.
Liz Culbreth was with, she went with the Federal Trade Commission for a long time, and then she came to TVA and was on the staff there. She probably retired there.
So I want to talk with you a little bit about your marriage to Howard.
All 40 years.
All 40 years. Did you all meet when he was the chaplain at Wesleyan?
Okay, when I left Wesleyan in 1958, that's not right. Yeah, that's right. We had sororities at Tennessee Wesleyan, the junior college sorority, and my little sister was still there. And in 1960, Howard graduated theology school at Emory. He came to Tennessee Wesleyan as the chaplain and assistant professor of religion. And my little sister in the sorority and her husband introduced us, a blind date, in 1961.
All right. So you were long gone from Wesleyan by that point.
I was 3 years from Wesleyan, yes.
All right. And after that blind date, how long did it take for you to have your next date?
Not long.
All right.
we dated pretty steadily, but of course he was in Athens and I was in Maryville.
When did you become engaged?
I got a ring in my first year in law school, but when I went to law school, I was committed to the marriage.
Why did you go to Emory with Howard rather than stay at Vanderbilt?
We were married.
All right. Did the fact that Howard was a minister have any impact on you or your career?
Probably had, well, it had some on mine, probably had more on his negatively, but the effect of his career, his being a Methodist minister, meant that I didn't have a job at the end of when I graduated because I did not know, he did not know where the bishop was going to send him for his second appointment. Tennessee Wesleyan College was his first appointment. Then he went to graduate school. Then his first parish was in Knoxville.
All right. So when you graduated from Vanderbilt, you had to wait to find out where Howard was going to be before you knew where to look for a job. Is that right?
That is right.
Now, as you're graduating from Vanderbilt and you don't know where you're going to go, did you have anything in your mind about what type of legal career you wanted to pursue? Had you thought about that?
I think I was just limited by the geography. I'd take anything.
So when it became apparent to you that the geography was the Knoxville area, how did you seek employment in Knoxville?
I called on people that I had some connection with, like Forrest Andrews was a Vanderbilt graduate, but had been out for 50 years, I think. And Judge Taylor had gone to Vanderbilt. Went to see him. And then I went to see Big Ray Jenkins. That Howard's father knew him from Union County.
You're talking about Ray H. Jenkins, the
Big
terror
Ray,
of Tellico Plains, when you're talking about Big Ray.
one and the same.
All right.
I went to Joe Mont McAfee at Edgerton McAfee because he was contemporary of Howard's brother. Mainly, I stayed with Bob Crosley. I hung out in his library after the review course and used his typewriter and his library book. And then I started through the Yellow Pages. I went to TVA. That's pretty important, really, because my brother was at TVA. I interviewed at TVA, and it was just one of all those interviews. And actually, I was offered a job at TVA later after I had my job at Stone in Bozeman. And they called me back for that interview, and that's the job that Liz Culbreth took. And I told Lynn Sieber that they just put my name on the door. And that's exactly what had happened. And so I kept the job I had.
So, what were your thoughts about coming to Knoxville and being a brand new lawyer and at the very same time being a new minister's wife? Did you think that being a lawyer was going to help or hurt in your role as a minister's wife?
Being a lawyer meant that I was devoted to the law. And the minister they only got one. They didn't get two for the same money. But Howard was okay with that.
As a practical matter, did the fact that you were a lawyer have an impact on Howard and his career as a minister?
It probably limited him there. But then, he decided to go to law school anyway, so.
Tell me about that. When did he decide to go to law school?
He had several appointments. After Westview was an appointment for a couple of years, we went to Asbury Acres. That's a nursing home.
In the Marital area.
In Marital, and he was the chaplain and the assistant administrator, and he actually became certified as a nursing home administrator there. So that helped him in that way, but it didn't help him in his church. So he kept church until he retired on a less than full-time basis.
I see.
But it didn't, he didn't become a district superintendent or a bishop in the Methodist Church, and that probably. But that was all right with him too, I think.
And where did Howard go to law school?
University of Tennessee.
Do you recall what years he went to law school at TBF?
I think it was 72 to 75.
After he completed his education as a lawyer, did he practice law?
No, he went with the Upper East Tennessee Human Resource Agency and started a program for legal services for the elderly using volunteer lawyers for a little or no fee.
You were the experienced lawyer in the family at that time. Did he call upon you to assist him with his legal obligations?
He called on me all the time, and people in his church did too. I mean, his family, everybody called on me as a lawyer. But he didn't need my help in what he was doing for the East Tennessee Human Resource Agency.
And how long did he keep that job?
Well, the same people in Knoxville asked him to come there and start a program in Knoxville, which he did. So he kept the job in Kingsport for a couple of years. Then he came to Knoxville. He stayed there. And was with Ether for almost 30 years and had a small church.
Ethra is the East Tennessee Human Resources?
Yes.
All right. And was he still doing ombudsman work with them then?
No, when he came here and started the legal services for the elderly, there was the ombudsman program, but he was not a part of that. But then they eliminated that position when the director left and Howard consolidated it with Howard's program. So in the end, he really did more with the ombudsman program than with the legal services.
When did Howard die?
2005.
And in our culture, you and Howard must have been among the pioneers of two highly educated professionals being married to one another. Do you recall any particular issues you faced because you were both professionals trying to further your professional careers?
No, because we chose not to have children. And so we both were just married to our professions. I do want to tell you one thing about Howard and his less than full-time church, if I may.
Sure.
The bishop, or the district superintendent, I guess, well, the bishop makes the appointments. This is when he was after law school. And he asked for this less than full-time position, and they sent him to this church to close it down because it was dying. And he built it up and stayed there for 25 years.
I want to take you back now and talk a little bit about when you first started practicing law in Knoxville. Do you recall how many lawyers practiced in Knoxville when you started practicing law in Knoxville?
300.
Do you know how many practice today in Knoxville?
1,800?
Right on top of it. It's 1,900 and something in Knoxville now. What's the difference between the Knoxville bar when you started in the 60s and early 70s and the Knoxville bar now?
Well, earlier I just know it was a profession, and people were genteel, and your word was your bond. So I don't know how it is today because I've been off counsel for 15 years. I don't know how it differs. I know that, you know, there's so many specialists, and there's just a lot of pressure, a lot of competition from, not just from lawyers because there's so many lawyers, but also from other professions and, you know, outside corporations, professional corporations coming in. I don't know how the practice is because I'm really not in it.
Tell us how you came to get your first job in Knoxville.
After I went through the Yellow Pages.
That's a start. Is that how you started looking for jobs, going through the Yellow Pages?
No, after I made the contacts that I mentioned before of people I might know, yes, I got the Yellow Pages, and I wish I had kept them because I've marked them off. And so, like when I went to Frank Flynn Sr., he was the president of the Bar Association, and he'd send me to someone else, and they would say, well, you know, we can't have it, we don't have anything, but you might try this and that. And I made the full circle. And when I got to the point where they were sending me back to the place where I started, then I had done the full circle. So I just went to my parsonage and started cleaning house. Waited for the phone call, which I did get.
Over what period of time did you go that first full circle?
I think at first, I don't know how seriously I looked before I passed the bar. Because I had to study for the bar, go to that, but I had to take care of my parsons too at the same time. Then we went on vacation. The Hinds always took the vacation last 2 weeks in July. Then I guess we got the bar results in August. So most seriously, I guess, just for a couple of months. I started to work at Stone in Bozeman on October the 19th, 1967.
Tell me about that phone call.
Well, I was probably doing my housework, and Harold Stone called. And I had interviewed with Harold Stone, and he said that Tom Dillard was leaving to go to the U.S. Attorney's Office, and he had a position should I come back in. And I did, and he told me to come to work the next day.
Tell me a little bit about Harold Stone. What kind of lawyer was he? What kind of practice did he have?
He was he was a business lawyer who had gone to law school to become a better accountant. So he had an accounting practice, and that's what he said is why he went to law school. But he was really good at what he did, and he had great clientele from his accounting practice. So he became kind of a tax man, even though he didn't have an advanced degree in taxation. But Harold never turned away anything. If someone come in and say they want to charter a state charter bank, and Harold say, okay. And I say, Harold? I didn't call him Harold. I went, Mr. Stone, have you ever chartered a bank from the state of Tennessee? And he said, no, but we're going to learn how. He did savings and loan. He never turned away anything.
He was not intimidated by new things.
Not at all. He was on the edge.
Howard Bozeman was his partner. Is that right?
Was. Yes, he's quite different.
Tell me about Howard Bozeman. What kind of lawyer was he?
He was a very deliberate, laid-back probate judge. And so if somebody came in on Friday and said, I really have to have this done by Monday, Howard Bozeman would go home and enjoy the company of his family for the weekend, which is a great thing, and he had a great family. Harold Stone would call in his associates and put them to work.
Did you primarily work for Mr. Stone or for Mr. Bozeman, or just both?
I think Stone, Mr. Stone.
Do you recall your first salary?
Yes, I do, $400 a month. Would you like to know how I arrived at that?
I would.
He said, how much do you need? And I said, well, our bills are $800 a month, and Howard pays $400, so I need $400.
You began in that office in 1967, am I right about that?
October 19.
And you're still there now.
I am.
It has changed over that time. Tell me when and how it changed.
The firm?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, Howard Bozeman was reelected county judge, which was a full-time position at that time, in 1974. He had been with Harold Stone since 1966. I came in 67. We were in the Hamilton Bank building on the 7th floor. When both parties came to Howard Bozeman and asked him to run again, and he did. There was a lawsuit over that, but that's not really what you asked. But anyway, when he was elected, and so he had to leave the firm. Ethically, we could not have Bozeman in the name, so it became Stone and Hinds, and was a continuation of the partnership. Because I was a partner, I was a 10% partner when it was Stone and Bozeman.
Now, before Mr. Bozeman left, you said he left to become the county judge.
Yes.
We have another name for that now, as the chief administrative officer of the county, wasn't he?
Actually, he was that first. The 74 go around, he was the probate judge.
All right. So when he left the law firm, did he leave to become the probate judge?
Yes.
All right. And after he left, did your position as a partner in the firm change?
Yes, I was. I guess it was 40-60. I was a partner.
Were you the first female name partner in a Knoxville law firm?
Oh no, Irma Greenwood. She's 25 years ahead of me, but she's a lawyer's lawyer at Kramer Racing now.
So when you started practicing in Knoxville with those 300 lawyers in Knoxville, how many of those lawyers were women?
3 practicing lawyers were women.
So that would have been you
Irma,
and
Amelia Strauss.
right, and Irma Greenwood.
And Irma Greenwood, yes.
All right. As you were getting started in the practice, did you ever have occasion to sit down with either of those other women and talk about what practice was like for a woman in Knoxville?
I did. Irma Greenwood was, well, let me start with Amelia Strauss because she was really a counselor. She tried to save marriages, and I tried to save marriages. Irma Greenwood was a business lawyer and did a great deal for Oak Ridge. I mean, she was as I said, she was a lawyer's lawyer. And let's see what, I don't know that she had much advice for me. She said, though, that what she needed was a wife because all of her partners' Christmas cards were prepared by their wives, and she had to do her own.
Do you recall any other advice that you received from your fellow women in the bar?
No, I was too busy practicing law, I guess.
Did you face any issues, any special issues as a woman in the bar in Knoxville as you began your practice?
Not significantly. I mean, people didn't realize I was a lawyer. One thing, it didn't look like a lawyer. You couldn't buy a business suit. I don't know what happened to this, those wonderful suits that were back in the 30s and 40s and that those actresses wore. But I couldn't find anything to wear. But also, they just weren't used to having a woman around. I mean, so like Dwight Kessel thought I was Harold's secretary when I went down to probate. And the bailiff tried to move me from within the rail, in Sessions Court the first time I went, but I was, that's it. I just ignored it.
When the bailiff approached you when you were inside the bar, what did he say to you?
He said, "Excuse me, these are just reserved for the lawyers."
And your response was?
I said, "Well, I'm a lawyer. I'm here on this case."
And what was his reaction to that?
Okay.
Now, when you first started practicing law, the federal court here was under the direction of Judge Taylor.
Most current docket in the country.
I don't know of any young lawyer who doesn't have a Judge Taylor story. Do you have a Judge Taylor story?
Oh, I have one or two.
Tell us your favorite.
Well, I went to court with Harold Stone, who was there on a tax case. And I don't know what I had done to help prepare. If anything, maybe I didn't carry his briefcase, but maybe I was doing something with the paper, passing notes or something. And when it was over, Judge Taylor leaned over and said, "Mr. Stone, why didn't you let that little girl from Vanderbilt say something?" But the other story is...
And what did Mr. Stone respond? I need to know that first.
I don't know what Mr. Stone said.
Okay.
But I will tell you that Judge Taylor later appointed me as his delegate to the Judicial Conference for 5 years in a row, which gave me a life membership in the Judicial Conference. And it was a great experience. I really appreciate that.
I think that tells you something about how much he appreciated you as a lawyer as well, doesn't it?
The little girl from Vanderbilt.
That's right. The little girl from Vanderbilt must have done well in his court.
Yeah, I did okay, I guess.
Well, tell us a little about your first case that was really your case, that wasn't a case that one of your partners was handling, but was actually Anna Hinds' case. Do you recall that case?
I do. My single most case, probably, because not only it was my first case that I tried alone, It's the case that took to the Supreme Court of Tennessee, which it is probably my most interesting story. I had this inheritance tax case. Actually, it just started out as filing an inheritance tax return for a widow who had been married 18 years to a man who had just died in an automobile accident. It was terrible, and they had 3 children. And I don't know, they owned everything as tenants by the entirety, so I don't know that there was even a probate. I just know that I filed the inheritance tax return. This was in 1977. I had been filing inheritance tax returns. I did a lot of tax returns, income tax and inheritance. I'd been doing this for years, and I always took the property that was held jointly as tenants by the entirety and reported 1/2 its value on the return, because it made sense to me that a marital partnership property was owned equally. And this one just happened to come back, I guess. So the Department of Revenue assessed 92% of that case, of that estate, in the as taxable, because they said the husband had contributed monetarily 92% of the value of the property. And so that was their interpretation of the code section on joint tenancy property. So I think what it says, if I can recall this, is that the portion that's taxable, is that which is clearly shown to belong to the decedent. And that was the language that I challenged. What I wanted to do...
And using that language, the Department of Revenue determined that 92% of it belonged to the husband who died, right?
Clearly.
And you said that's not right.
Clearly, to me, the contribution to the marriage was equal because of the value of her services as a homemaker. And so I tried the case and put on an expert that showed the value of the services of a homemaker.
Where did you try that case?
In Chancery Court in Knox County.
You remember who the judge was?
Lynn Broughton. And he didn't think much of my argument.
I was going to ask you if Chancellor Broughton bought into your argument.
He thought it was pretty ridiculous.
All right.
And 2 of the justices on the Supreme Court were not impressed either. But fortunately, it was a 3-2 decision. And Chief Justice Brock wrote the opinion, and he saw it my way. But the dissent, written by Justice Harbison, who was one of my professors at Vanderbilt Law School, was much longer than the decision itself. And there was this huge opinion from Harry Phillips when he was the Attorney General attached. I mean, it's a very complicated matter over what I thought was so simple, because these people had this marital property that they had struggled together to. This woman, my client, had 18 years of tax returns and 18 years of canceled checks. I just thought that was incredible.
So, when the Supreme Court decided it in your favor in a 3-2 decision, did you have the opportunity to call your client and tell your client that you had prevailed?
I don't remember. I probably just sent her the opinion. And because it didn't make a heck of a lot of difference.
Tell us why.
Monetarily, because we were talking about $400 in tax.
All right. But it changed the law in the state of Tennessee.
It changed the law for one day, I think, because the Supreme Court sat on my case after I'd argued it for a full year because it would hugely impact the inheritance tax income to the state of Tennessee. And the commissioner was my friend Jane Ann Woods. We were in law school together. But it would make a huge difference on big cases. So all they really did was the legislature then, clarified the law on taxation of jointly held properties, on the whole treatment of jointly held properties, and it has been through dozens of iterations since then. It's now in the tax section, Title 67, and it was in 30.
Well, you say your case was good for a day, but it was good enough to force the legislature to act, wasn't it?
It was. It was.
This may be a good time to take a little break. We've been going for almost an hour.
Okay.
When you started practicing law in 1967, what was your average work week like?
7 in the morning to 7 at night, 5 days a week. The office was open on Saturday, and I worked half a day, I think until 1. Had Saturday afternoon off and Sunday morning through lunch, and came back to work on Sunday afternoon.
Was there much talk back then about work-life balance?
None.
How did that impact your ability to serve in your second role as the wife of a Methodist minister?
Well, I had Sunday mornings off. I taught Sunday school.
Did you have occasion early in your career to be active in the Bar Association?
Yes, right away.
Tell us about what you did in the bar.
Well, I was the president of the Young Lawyers section, which barristers we were called. They don't call them that anymore, do they?
In Knoxville, they
the
are
barristers?
the barristers, yes.
Okay. And as such, I was a delegate to the American Bar Association Young Lawyers Division, and I was, I guess, appointed by the president of the, or some officer in the Real Property Probate and Trust Law section as a liaison to the Real Property Probate and Trust Law section for the ABA. That was a great experience.
What did you enjoy about that experience?
Well, the seminars were great, but I had to do a report. I went to their work sessions, and they would have these intense work sessions at these exotic hotels where the wives got to go out and do things, and the lawyers worked daylight till dark. It was just really a hard-working group of people.
Did you become associated with lawyers across the country in that fashion?
I did, actually, more in the business law section, the Small Business Committee. But as a young lawyer, of course, I didn't leave the young lawyers section until I was kind of forced out. They kept changing the age or something, or I kept lying about my age or something. But then I was in other sections of the ABA and mainly in the business law section.
Did you ever serve any leadership positions in the Knoxville Bar Association?
Yes, I was the treasurer. And on the board.
On the Board of Governors?
Yes.
Right. You said treasurer in such a way that it sounded like maybe it was a job. Was it a tough job to be treasurer of the
actually,
KBA?
It was the treasurer's job to, collect the dues, and so to keep the roll. That's how I knew exactly, how many lawyers were practicing in 1967 and whenever I became treasurer. So I knew them all.
Were you active in the state bar as well?
I was the president of the Women's Bar Conference.
Tell us about the Women's Bar Conference, because I don't know about that.
Well, that's because it doesn't exist anymore. A conference is different from a section. And I think the young lawyers had a conference at that time too. So it was just nothing. I mean, it didn't have a vote, didn't have a delegate or anything. But it was just made up of the women lawyers in the state. And
how big a conference was that at the time that you started?
Probably, maybe a half dozen, maybe a dozen, no more than that. But those who came to the meetings, they would elect officers and rotate among the 3 grand divisions of the state as to who would be the president. And until I came along, there were so few of them, they would just, the same ones were just taking this office every 3rd year. So when it came my term, I said, we're not doing this anymore. I mean, why do we have a conference? We're lawyers.
So when you said we're not going to have a conference, we're lawyers, weren't you really making a little larger statement there?
Well, it must not have lasted very long, because a few years later they started the Tennessee Lawyers Association for Women, and it's a big deal.
Right. But when you decided that you would not continue the women's conference, tell me why you decided that.
I didn't think we should be segregated.
And why not?
Because we were lawyers.
You didn't want to be a woman lawyer, you wanted
That's
to
right.
be a lawyer.
Our degree was just as good as the rest of them.
All right. As you observe new lawyers coming into the practice of law, as you became a more mature lawyer, did you perceive any significant differences between the challenges that they face in today's legal world than those that you faced in the 60s and early 70s?
Well, I think they made it more difficult because they had a more balanced life. I mean, to me, I was just married to the law.
If you were going to give a brand new lawyer in your firm just one piece of advice, what would that advice be?
Well, it would have nothing to do with the balance of life, I guess. It would be more about integrity and professionalism and preparedness.
Were those the keys to your success?
I'd like to think so.
As you became a more mature lawyer, what type of practice did you maintain? What kind of cases were you handling, or what type of practice?
At first, I did a lot of business organizations, and at that time they were single shareholder. The law just changed so that you could have a single shareholder corporation, and I was just churning out charters right and left. And I told you Harold Stone had a huge business law practice, and that developed somehow into a practice of domestic relations, because our business clients started getting divorces, and they were long-term marriages. I mean, they weren't, we didn't have all of this custody issues. So we just got into that area and tried to dissolve these marriages by dividing their estates properly. And we did that for about a 10-year span, a lot of divorces.
As you started in the domestic relations practice, what was the general thought about how a marital estate should be divided at that time?
I don't think they were dividing them. I think that for the most part, early in my career anyway, most of the divorces were younger. The wife got the children and the station wagon and the child support, and maybe some alimony. But they didn't get a portion of an estate.
What was your philosophy about that?
That it was a partnership, and that you dissolve a partnership based on equality.
And is that how you handle your domestic relations cases?
It is.
Over the course of your distinguished career at the bar, what changes have there been that, in your mind, have had the most impact? Whether that's a positive impact or whether that's a negative impact, what changes have there been that have been most impactful on the practice of law?
Well, probably in the domestic relations area, which it's just so prevalent, and especially second and third marriages. And I think that the area of domestic relations is really demanding, because if it's done properly, you have to know so much about every area of the law. And like we went through the quadro, the Qualified Domestic Relations Order, and then the law that covered the division of retirement accounts. Those are very complicated issues. So those I can handle, but these parenting plans and all these things about custody and visitation, I just didn't want anything to do with, and I quit doing that.
Has a significant portion of your caseload been other than domestic relations?
Yes, I started doing more estate administration. I'd always done estate administration, and that's all I do now.
Do you enjoy that aspect of the law?
I do. Mm-hmm.
What is it about that particular part of the law that you enjoy?
Dead people don't talk back to you.
A point well taken. Anna, as we're doing this interview right now in 2013, one of the really pressing topics in the legal profession is the manner in which we select our judges, particularly our appellate court judges. Do you have any concern about the state of the profession with regard to our selection of judges who serve?
I do, and I'm not really well enough informed about what's going on in Tennessee or nationwide to comment on that with much skill. But I do just read the newspapers and the Tennessee Bar Journal and things. And yes, I'm concerned about the possibility of elected judges. But nationwide, I think that the Citizens United case is just the worst thing that's happened in this century. And it just makes possible I'm not saying that it's a bribery kind of buying of judges, but it's a selection of judges by interests that I wish would not be making the decisions.
You have, for the past number of years, practiced under a plan that's been known as the Tennessee Plan, where a commission of lawyers and lay folks interview potential candidates for judicial positions and then make recommendations to the governor. Is that a method of selecting judges that you believe works well?
I think so.
Is there any other form of selection of judges that you would recommend other than either the Tennessee Plan or the direct election of judges?
Not the direct election of judges. I mean, my friends at election time say, now, I don't know anything about the judges, so what can you tell me about the judges? They have no idea. And the fact that judges would have to lobby and run, not lobby, but solicit money and votes, It's just unprofessional.
If I can recall this correctly, it seems like somebody told me you had a chance one time to serve the legal profession not as a lawyer, but as a decider, as a member of a jury. Is that right?
I did that on 2 occasions.
2 occasions.
Yes.
Was it on the state level or on the federal level?
One of each.
Which came first?
I'm not sure that I can tell you. I don't know. They were close together, I know that.
Well, let's talk about the one in state court to start with. Do you remember which court you were in?
And I was in circuit court, I think Wheeler Rosenbaum's court.
So it would have been a civil case.
Yes.
In Judge Rosenbaum's court.
Yes.
Do you remember receiving the summons to come for jury duty?
I do, and because Howard said, they always, after on the second time especially, he said, I would love to serve on a jury. Why do I never get called?
And when you got called, did you think you wanted to go be a member of a jury or not?
Oh, sure.
Okay.
Now, over the years, office staff and clients have called when they received summons and said, we want you to help us, get out of this jury duty. And I said, no, you're not getting out of jury duty. That's your duty. We pay our employees while they're in jury duty. I mean, I thought, how would you like to be a party to a lawsuit, and you have all these people out there who didn't have anything else to do except, hang around the courthouse. You need people who are educated and doing things other than hanging out at the courthouse.
So when you initially went into the jury pool over in Judge Rosenbaum's court, did you have any idea that you might actually be selected?
No, I was not surprised.
Do you remember what kind of case it was?
I remember that it was technical. It was very difficult and hard to follow for the jury. And I think jury duty is really difficult, and it's very difficult to get a unanimous verdict by the lawyers. So it's a system. I tried one jury case, and I lost it, and I don't understand juries, even though I do respect them.
Did serving on a jury yourself give you a greater appreciation for the role of jurors?
I've respected them already, but yes.
Did you recall selecting a foreperson for the jury that you were on in the state court?
I was the one.
Tell us about the deliberations. Were they civil or were they acrimonious? How did it go?
I think they were civil, but they were vocal, and we had to ask for documents to be sent back in, and we had to go home and come back the next day before we could decide. It's tough.
Were you ultimately able to achieve a unanimous verdict?
We did, but it was not easy.
How about in federal court? Do you remember what kind of case that was?
It was a tax evasion case. It was Judge Jarvis.
All right. Do you have any particular memories of serving on the jury in that case?
I did. Well, it was kind of obvious, cut and dried, but the defendant lost. But I thought the lawyer did a good job, and it was a woman.
The defense counsel for the person accused of evading
Yes.
the taxes?
Yes.
I see. You also had a chance to have some influence on how jurors were treated in the state of Tennessee. Tell me how that came about.
Well, the president of the Tennessee Bar Association appointed me as co-chair with Gail Ashworth to head the Jury Reform Commission of the Bar Association. And we met for about a year and went over these things. There were maybe 20 people on the committee, judges and lawyers and such. But the main person was Neil Coyne, Professor Neil Coyne. He was the reporter, and he did, you know, most of the work. He's a Vanderbilt man.
So, as a result of your work on the Jury Reform Commission, were there any actual reforms in the jury system made that you recall that were significant?
Yeah, well, I don't know how significant they were, but I think that the judges learned to treat jurors more civilly, or at least, you know, and the lawyers, to recognize them as being not pieces of furniture. And, you know, they gave them paper to write on, and, you know, allowed them to do something besides just sit there and then expect them to remember everything that had been said. It was mainly information and give and take between the jury and the court, the lawyers.
Now, you have multiple times throughout this interview mentioned to me that this person or that person or some other person was a Vanderbilt person. Causes me to believe that the Vanderbilt connection is very important to you. Is that true?
The Vanderbilt connection is the most important decision I ever made.
Tell me why.
Well, I love Vanderbilt. I love the people there. You just, they promise you that if you get in, that you'll get out, unless you just really don't try anything. So I felt very comfortable being a student there, even though I'm not sure I deserved to be there, but I would get out. And I stayed, and I served in the alumni, as alumni board chairman, president, in 1980, 82 at the law school. And I've been on the council 3 different times. I've been president of the Vanderbilt Alumni Association, the National Association, which entitled me to serve on the Board of Trust for 2 years.
It's quite an honor to be the president, the national president of the Vanderbilt Alumni Association. Is that an honor that's often conferred on someone that didn't go to undergraduate school?
I'm not the only one, but I'm one of 2 or 3, I think. Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
After you leave Vanderbilt and come back to Knoxville with your Methodist minister husband, you're surrounded by a lot of orange. How has it been to be the Vanderbilt crusader in the middle of this sea of orange in which you live?
It's pretty awesome.
You enjoy holding up that yellow and black?
I do, even if we lose. When you go to a Vanderbilt sports event, you know you've been to a collegiate event.
I recall not too long ago meeting with you over, we happened to be in the courthouse, and you were a little concerned. Do you remember that occasion? And can you tell me what you were concerned about?
Well, it was raining and my umbrella was gone, and it was my Vanderbilt umbrella.
Do you remember what you told me about that?
I told you, I guess I told you that I didn't think anyone would carry it in Knoxville if they really knew what it was, but it hasn't resurfaced.
Maybe there are more Vanderbilt fans around than you realize now that Vanderbilt beats us on a regular basis.
Well, I think probably someone threw it in the river.
And I know that outside of your service to the legal profession, you have also been very active in community and civic activities in this area. Out of all of your community involvement, which have you found to be the most personally satisfying?
I know this is not community involvement. Vanderbilt's most satisfying
All right.
of everything, but the Boys and Girls Club. I served on the Boys and Girls Club board for 25 years. I started with just the Girls Club, and then the Girls Club merged with the Boys Club. And those are just people with needs who are so appreciative. And the board members like Tim Irwin and guys who just give so much of their time and their talent. It's a really worthwhile cause.
A little over a year ago, you were displaced from your home by a fire. Tell us how that happened.
Well, I'm still displaced. The fire was in the chimney of a villa. And I'm the upstairs, and it was a shared chimney. And I don't know how it started, and I was not there, but the chimney fell into my condo and took everything with it.
All of the property you had accumulated over the years?
Pretty much.
So, over the past year, have you been trying to accumulate new things?
No.
Why not?
Well, I'm living in an apartment that my insurance company has furnished, along with the furniture and 4 of everything, like, saucers, plates. And I just don't want to accumulate a bunch of stuff. But also, you really realize how little you need to get by. You just really don't need all that stuff. And I don't have any place to put it. I have a little storage bin, and they're not doing anything to repair my place yet. So I'm just living it one day at a time.
You're a person who focuses on getting done what's in front of you at that moment, aren't you?
I have a one-track mind.
That's how you've practiced law, isn't it?
It is.
What do you think has been, out of all the qualities that you bring to the profession, what is the quality that has made you such a success that you've been?
Well, I don't know that I've been such a success, but I did a 2-week seminar in trial practice once, and they did all these videos and things, and the judges critiqued you at the end, and this was a woman judge too, and she said, "I know that you would never lie to me." And I thought, well, why would it ever occur to anyone to lie? But I would never lie. I would never lie to anyone.
I see that as of 1998, you have been of counsel with Stone and Hinds, and I've always wanted to know, what does that mean?
There are books written on it, so it means a lot of different things to different people. But to me, I am a former partner of a law firm with whom I have a close, personal, continuing relationship, meaning that I'm available there for advice and counsel, and as like recollection of what went on 50 years ago.
You are the institutional memory of your law firm.
I guess.
Do your current partners take advantage of that fact? Do they come to you for advice?
Well, they come to me for remembrance.
Do you enjoy being of counsel?
Very much.
Are your hours different than when you started out back in the late 60s?
No, they're a little different. I come in for lunch or later.
Are there some things that you haven't done yet that you really hope to do as time moves along?
Well, most of my travel has been with the American Bar Association, and they'll take you some pretty exotic places. And but I still would like to travel.
Where would you like to go?
I would like to go to Italy.
Why Italy?
George Clooney has a villa there.
I'll call George and tell him you're on the way. Is there anything else that you wish I had asked you about that I haven't asked you about today?
Oh, I think I wanted to tell you about the Legal Fraternity and my swearing in at the Supreme Court of the United States.
Great.
When I was at Vanderbilt, and even at Emory, the fraternity was all male. So I was not in a legal fraternity, and it's just like, why would you want to be a member of that anyway? So when Howard started law school in '72, he was joining PAD, and they were accepting women. He told me, I guess he told me. So they invited me to come over and go through initiation with Howard. So, and I think that was '72. Then PAD has a law day at the Supreme Court, the United States Supreme Court, which people really miss today because, I think they sign up online or something. So I went and was sworn in at the Supreme Court of the United States. Justice Thomas Clark signed my whatever that certificate is. And I invited the Congressman Duncan, who came, and Senator Baker and Senator whoever it was, Brock, I guess. They didn't come and respond, but John Duncan came, Senior. Right? And then he showed us all around the Capitol and introduced us to, Speaker of the House, and it was really great. So they took this picture, and it's on the front of the PAD. It was more like a newspaper then. When
you say PAD, are you referring to?
Phi Alpha Delta.
All right, and that's a legal fraternity.
Right. So here I am standing in the middle of about 50 lawyers wearing white, because, you couldn't find anything dark, and I'm the only woman in there. And this is, I don't want to be really the only woman, but the funniest thing about this is that, because I didn't think anything about it, so 25 years later, I get a call from PAD, and they said they were just celebrating their 25th year of admission to women, and that I was the first woman to be admitted. And would I come and speak to the convention in Miami? And I said, well, I'm going to be at the beach at New Smyrna or somewhere else. And I sent them some things, but I still get, now we have an Alumni Association in Knoxville, and I got their picture of the PAD Day this year, and it's really revealing.
Are there a few more women in that picture than there were in the picture where you...
Probably 50%.
Right. I guess my final question for you, Anna, is when all is said and done, how would you like to be remembered?
Well, I hope no one is called on anytime soon to remember me. But I really don't expect to be remembered. But I just hope that I have done no harm and that I've been fair and upheld justice.
Anna, you may not expect to be remembered, but you are going to be remembered.
Well, thank you.
You're going to be remembered as one of the real pioneers of the Knoxville Bar Association, one of the most successful women lawyers who ever practiced in Knoxville, Tennessee. And so whether you're too modest to acknowledge that or not, the bar in Knoxville is going to remember Anna Hinds as someone to live up to pretty much forever, I think.
Well, thank you very much for that, and thank you for having me.
Well, thank you for being here.